Welcome as we continue our series of videos about applying for a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. These videos are meant to guide you as you prepare your PARTF application. This video looks at the PARTF Scoring System, providing an overview of that, as well as what documents to submit and definitions that are used. All of these are in the application, so please make sure you've downloaded the PARTF application and refer to the scoring system and to the definitions at the back of the application document. A reminder that the scoring system is just one of several tools used to select grant recipients. The PARTF staff reviews all applications to determine the final scores. Even though you fill it out and complete what you consider the scoring, we do have scoring teams that review these applications, provide scoring based on the PARTF administrative rules as described in that scoring system document. We also want to point out that all of these guides and definitions for planning are part of best practices in Parks and Recreation planning, public involvement, and development. These were all considered in the design of the application. The scoring system sections are broken down into several components. We examine the level of planning for the proposed project, the level of public involvement and support for the proposed project, and we also are looking at what funds are requested and what are they going towards. Is it new facilities, facility renovation, trail, linear connections, or support facilities as opposed to recreation facilities? Those are all eligible, but that is also looked at in the scoring system. We also look at the suitability of the site. How will it provide for the proposed project development? We also look at the applicant's commitment to maintaining the project. Is there a full-time department, public works staff, volunteers? And then finally, the land acquisition section does ask a question about the type of site being proposed for acquisition. All sites come in, they're considered average, so some might have some significant resources that are being protected, and that is examined as well. So the PARTF definitions are in the back of the application. This next part will go through the scoring system, but also touch on the definition and how that's evaluated. So what is a survey, master plan, support facility, recreation facility, and really helping you understand the best practices and how to implement those for our PARTF requirements. So as we look at recreation and support facilities, typically look at outdoor facilities such as sport courts, fields, fishing, category called court games where you might be putting in bocce courts, cornhole, volleyball, indoor facilities. And keep in mind that one indoor facility may contain multiple facilities within that. So as you're looking at say you're building a gymnasium, you might have a basketball court, an indoor track, arts and crafts room, or a pottery room. Those would be three different recreation facilities that are included within that one building. So look at the definitions here on the right hand side. This is directly from the printed application that you should have, and it provides a little more information on each of those. Support facilities are important and vital to every park, but they do not count as recreation facilities. Parking lots, lighting, ball field lighting, for example, bleachers, walkways if they're sidewalks. Also, we want you to note that for a trail or walkway to count as a trail, as a recreation facility, it must be a minimum continuous length of 1/4 mile. So this is for your trails, equestrian trails, hiking trails. If it meets that 1/4 mile minimum, you can get points for a trail. And in addition to that, if it meets that criteria of 1/4 mile and it also connects to a sidewalk or a facility outside the park, say it's connecting to a school next door or a neighborhood community, then you can also get the connection points. But it's got to meet that trail criteria of 1/4 mile and provide an existing connection to something that's already there, such as a sidewalk. Renovating facilities, or you can either develop new facilities. A renovation is an extensive reconstruction of a facility to restore or improve its usefulness to its original purpose. So that's important. Renovation is certainly something that's eligible for PARTF, However, no points are awarded if the deterioration of the site is due to inadequate maintenance during its reasonable lifetime. So we do realize there's a lot of facilities being renovated that were built 30 or 40 years ago, and they've at the end of their reasonable lifetime, or a lot of parks have just really been loved to death as your community enjoys those parks, and a lot of those need renovating. But also note that if you're renovating a facility, either recreation or non-recreation, for a new use, so it's not its original purpose, but it's a new use, then it will be counted as a new or like facility in the scoring system. Let's look at planning documents. Always like to say, if you don't make a plan, you plan to fail. Planning is a very important part of creating and working with your community. It's an opportunity for public engagement, and to make sure that you build facilities that are needed, well constructed, so they can be well maintained and have a long lifetime. So we have a site-specific master plan for a park, comprehensive system-wide plan for your entire park system. Some folks may have a greenway system master plan, and some folks may have a capital improvement plan. So the master plan for a specific part. Here's on the right-hand side is the definition from the application. It's a long-range plan for a park that includes site analysis, acquisition boundaries, all capital improvements. And this master plan has all these components to it. These are the things that we're looking for when we evaluate it. If any of these are missing, you will not get points for that master plan. One thing that folks, a lot of times you need to look at is the program description, project costs. So what are your project costs long term? Please include those in the plan. Public involvement should also be part of that. So this component does not apply for land acquisition projects. We don't anticipate that anyone would put funding into the site-specific plan if you don't own the property. The other item that's very important is the project must conform with the plan document. So what you're proposing to do is what's outlined in this master plan. You have different point levels. You get more points if it was revised or created in the past 5 years versus the 6 to 10 years. Anything over 10 years will not be considered for points. You can get additional points if the local governing board has adopted the master plan. And here you see the documentation required is outlined in the scoring system of your application. The planning document, you can provide a digital copy since the applications are digital, or a paper copy. And if you have a paper copy, we can return that to you. We will do that after the grant review period. The local governing board meeting minutes or resolution, if applicable, if they've adopted it. And the key thing here, and you'll see this in all the planning documents, is please highlight the page numbers or have them on a sheet of paper of where the proposed project is listed. So for all these planning documents, you want to let us know, the review team know, where to look in this document. If you don't let us know, there's a chance that we could miss it as we review it. So please highlight those page numbers. Moving on to the comprehensive system-wide plan. This needs to adequately address all of these items. So again, it has to be done in the past 10 years. And the area that I've highlighted there is an evaluation of existing recreational facilities and parkland outside of perhaps your current jurisdiction or parks that you manage. I highlight this because this is frequently what is missed when applicants do not get points for the comprehensive plan. They haven't done a full assessment of what's nearby. So YMCAs, school facilities, state parks. Say you're a county system and your plan only includes the parks that you own that are county managed, but you neglected to include anything that local other municipal jurisdictions within your county have, or state parks, other areas in the region. Also private sector opportunities, fitness centers, gyms. Those are things that the community uses as part of their for their recreational needs to be met. So that needs to be that full inventory, especially in the comprehensive plan. The other thing that you need to include is a detailed description of how you involve the public, a represented number of the citizens. How are they included? And we'll talk about the needs assessment, and it's some of those same concepts, how you included input for this plan in producing it, and how the project fits within that plan. Finally, you want to note that the local government may use a multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plan. We're getting a lot more questions about those documents. And again, Recreation Resources Service can provide you examples of any of these planning documents to help you if you're considering starting these plans. But say a county completes a plan, all the local jurisdictions within that county participate in it. Can that individual city include this countywide plan as their comprehensive plan? They can if it satisfies all the above criteria for that local government. So if I look at one specific city, can I read all of this information? Have you documented this that's appropriate for that jurisdiction to count that? So when you submit this system-wide plan, you need to have the proposed, again, like always, the proposed project must conform with the plan. So what you're proposing to do is outlined in this plan, is produced or revised within the past 10 years. And again, it's optional for the local governing board to adopt it. And if so, you get an extra point. So the documentation, again, digital or paper copy. Digital with everything else is easy for us to share and review. But make sure you document and highlight the page numbers where the project is listed. And if it was adopted by the board, please provide those minutes. The master plan for a greenway system, similar requirements for submitting documentation of that plan, either digital or paper copy. If adopted, include that. But these are all the components that's required for a greenway system plan. It must adequately address all of the items. So again, like on the other planning documents, if anything is missing, you will not get points for that. So you need to have inventory existing data. Typically with a greenway plan, because they're corridors, there's been some analysis on identifying potential corridors, hubs or destinations along those corridors. It can be natural resources, man-made, existing parks. Have you addressed challenges such as floodways, where you need to make crossings, say at railroad crossings, major roadways? What have you done to analyze that and address that? These are usually also presented in a mapping form. Like other plans, you need to have an action plan. So what are the steps and priorities that are set? What are cost estimates long term? You need to have all this information adequately addressed to get points. And as the others, public involvement needs to be part of that, as well as cost information included. Next planning document is the Capital Improvement Plan. This is a plan that lists all the capital expenditures or all parks and recreation projects that a local government has approved for funding and scheduled for the near future. And you can see on the example shown that goes over several fiscal years. This plan is typically a component of the local government's regular budget cycle. You want to make sure it's that's not like a resolution that says if we get this grant, we'll fund it the next 3 years. That's basically what your basic facts and assurances are. This capital improvement plan is a different planning document from the local government. So when you submit your CIP, we recommend that you submit the entire document. I know a lot of the larger jurisdictions it's pretty large, but submit that. Let us know where it is documented in the plan. Please tab or highlight the page or page numbers. So in this example, you can see that it's everything within the community, public works, administration, and here's the recreation codes. And for this particular application, they were looking at downtown park, and you can see what was committed. So the plan needs to have the proposed project in there. And you can have the meeting minutes that show this is part of the local government's regular budget process. Surveys and public involvement. So how do we document that? I want to let you know how we review the application document. So number one, which you've heard several times, is that the proposed project is presented. So it's like this is exactly what we're building, we're proposing to do, and apply for a grant. We want to make sure that the public's had an opportunity to comment and provide feedback. How did the applicant advertise opportunities to provide public input? That's the same with the surveys, public meetings. Make sure you document those methods, the attendance and response that you received. Population is representative of the jurisdiction, has had the opportunity to provide input. So it's not just putting surveys or meeting announcement at your community center, because you probably have just a small number of your population in your jurisdiction that go to the community center. How do you reach all the other groups in the community? We also look to see that the public actually supports what is proposed. So what have they provided at public meetings? And very important is that it's received in time to contribute to the proposed project and the plan. So if you're submitting minutes from a meeting 2 weeks before the deadline of this grant application, odds are that input did not go into preparing the plan. So you need to be working on that right now at the start of the grant cycle if you haven't already begun that. So when we look at public meetings, the applicant needs to conduct a meeting exclusively for discussing the PARTF grant. It needs to be an exclusive meeting. It has to be talking about the project. We're applying for grant funds. It's a 50-50 match. And the public has the opportunity to provide comments. So you obtain comments at this exclusive meeting, and it's been done within the past 24 months. In addition, the public needs to support the proposed project. You may have some negative comments from time to time, but all in all, is the project supported by the public? The documentation required is a description of the means used to widely advertise the meeting. Again, we want to reach out to your entire population to give them the opportunity. The minutes, including discussion of the proposed project, needs to be included. Who was present and what were the comments? The recreational needs survey. So here's the definition from the definition section on the needs survey. Again, this is a survey that identifies the needs and preferences of recreational opportunities, and usually this is one of the first steps in developing a master plan for a specific park or your system-wide plan. The local government needs to distribute the questionnaire to a broad and representative sample of its citizens. It can be distributed through various means, and I usually recommend multiple methods to send out information, to share information. Through mail, door-to-door, you can do telephone, you can do focus groups in public meetings. And the elements of a survey must be documented, and these key things must be included for you to gain points for your recreation needs survey. Again, distributed to a sample of citizens, large and varied enough to be representative of the population. A random sample is preferred. The number of respondents should be large enough to represent that population. The questions should be clear and unbiased. So you should not limit citizens to choosing from a narrow list of recreation opportunities. Provide, and again, Recreation Resources Service, contact your consultant. We can give you some examples, provide example questions and surveys that you could probably adapt to your community. Copies of the same questionnaire must be distributed to everyone in the sample. And the survey should include at least 3 of the following demographics. So to be able to document that it was a representative sample of your community and the demographics of your community, make sure that you ask questions to collect those demographics. So you need to have at least 3 of the following: age, gender, education level, race, ethnicity, household income, or household size. So at least 3 of those need to be completed. The survey needs to be conducted within the past 10 years, and you need to demonstrate that the proposed project meets the needs that were expressed as a result of that survey. Again, the documentation required is a copy of the questionnaire. And we mentioned, multiple methods. Some communities, so you have a large Hispanic population in your community. Perhaps you do a questionnaire in English and one in Spanish. So you can make sure that you sharing that information, collecting information from all of your constituents. Documentation needs to include the results of the survey. How were those questions answered? Provide a description. Write a description of the survey distribution. This is how we sent it out to the community. This is how they were able to access it. What were the dates and the number of surveys distributed? Again, is this in time to plan and prepare for your project? What were the number of respondents? And this is where you include the demographic information that we discuss. And you need to describe, like, yes, this is representative of our full population, which you can get from your census data, for example. And show results demonstrate support for the project. Walking was very high. We're putting in trail system, have bike opportunities. Here's an example I wanted to share when we talk about response rate. So in this example, a survey was sent to 500 random households. This is not a PARTF application because of the example is 16 counties. But say a total of 8,000 surveys were mailed. The response rate, you had 1,448 surveys returned, questionnaires returned. Of those, that's a breakdown of 1,397 paper copies, 51 online responses, but you also had 605 returned in the mail that were non-deliverable addresses. So that gives you the 1,448 usable responses out of how many deliverable addresses that were included, and gives you a response rate of 19.6. So that's one way you can document your response rate. Civic group support is also part of the application for public input. And in this case, the applicant must present the project that's described as the PARTF project that you're applying for funding to 2 or more local civic groups. You can do more, but you have to have a minimum of 2. If you submit an application and you only have documentation for 1 civic group, you will not get points for this. You also must receive support for the project from that group. The documentation required is an agenda, correspondence, or other documentation from the group. So this would be the group's agenda that confirmed the meeting dates and presentation, and that the applicant gave the presentation. So that's the town, the county, a representative of your jurisdiction. Sometimes it's the parks director, might be an elected official that works with parks. They're given the presentation. And the documentation must be from the group. So a lot of times that's a letter on letterhead. From the Rotary Club, for example, thank you for presenting this Park and Recreation Trust Fund project that the city is considering. We appreciate you presenting at our meeting on this date. Our club supports this effort and these projects. So if it's simply a letter of support, say from the athletic league that says, we support any projects that you're doing, to improve the baseball fields, that doesn't document that there was actually a presentation about the PARTF grant that was done. So solely a letter of support would not count as a presentation. The Parks and Recreation Board, a lot of communities do have a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board or a committee. You present to that board. This is similarly appointed, typically it's a non-elected group, and they provide a motion of support for the project. The documentation required are the meeting minutes that include that support. Thank you. This wraps up our video 5 on the scoring system and definitions. If you need any assistance, please go to go.ncsu.edu/RRS and contact your regional consultant, and we'll be glad to assist you with any questions or providing examples of some of the documents we discussed. Thank you.